We are. It looks like we are going live. Don't worry, Joanna is going to be here in like probably 30 seconds. About 45 seconds ago, I looked over and I said, oh my gosh, I forgot my water. She's like, I'm going to go run and get it. So that was very nice of her because I don't know if I can go an hour and a half with talking and not having any water. I feel parched already. So she's going to be right back, I promise. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Glad you're here on an awesome Wednesday night. It's our favorite time of the week. I hope you like it too. We've got some cool things to talk about. And really, the theme behind tonight's live stream about, how many, how many tanks is enough? You see a lot of stuff going on YouTube and social media and Facebook and all these things. And I wanted to at least share some of our experience as our fish room has grown. I've talked to a lot of people who have large fish rooms that start out relatively small and then they've kind of gone in reverse. And so we're going to talk about kind of how that can happen. And of course, we're going to answer your questions as this wonderful night progresses. So like I said, thank you so much for being here. Thank you. We've got a whole house full of moderators, Myrtle, Clint, Mary Page. Thank you so much for being here and all that you do. A couple of announcements. Oh, wait. We have the sidekick coming in with
sidekick.
My sidekick.
Wow.
Well, I think you're I don't know if you're like my main kick, my main sidekick.
I'll be a sidekick. I'll be like the Hastings to your Poirot.
I don't know what that is.
Watson to.
You can be my somebody to Iron Man or whatever that is. I don't know.
That'll be War Machine.
Okay. Yeah, you can
I'll
be
my. Any of those.
All right, that's good.
Sherlock
Bonnie,
Holmes.
Thank you so much for the super chat already. Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Bonnie.
Thanks for being here. Glad that you're here. So yeah, I was talking about how tonight we're going to be talking about fish tanks. How many is a good amount? How many do you have to start thinking about other things? And yeah, we're going to talk about it. And it's going to be fun.
Oops, I did it again.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Multiple tank syndrome, all that.
Oh, yeah.
So a couple of announcements before I get into the subject. As always, Monday's video, thank you so much. So many of you were it was well, just going to open that up in the middle of my monologue, huh?
Party time.
So many of you really responded to that video well. Lots of comments. So if you haven't seen Monday's video, it was about really, I think, one of the most amazing videos in terms of money-saving tips. That wasn't actually our tip. It was from a viewer who made us aware that there was a really great deal at Lowe's. And so if you haven't seen that video, check it out. Some of the stuff is actually sold out. I don't think I was really expecting that because Lowe's is like a big national company. And all of a sudden, like I started seeing some of the messages pop up, some of the comments in the video today, like, oh man, they sold out of this one or this size and this type of rock. But check it out if you haven't. You came out with a video today on the Small Scape, your channel.
I did.
All about plants. So if you like plants, if you love aquatic plants, then I think that's something you might want to see. Kind of did an update.
I did an update. So many people have been asking, can I have an update on all my various plants? So yeah, I kind of hopped around and some of them are a 1-month update, some a 4-month update. But you know what? Just check it out.
Pretty
fun
cool
to see
stuff.
Plants grow.
Yeah, and now and for the members in the group, tomorrow's members video is going to be kind of cool because I'm going to be unveiling some fish that we just got, and these were never fish on my to-do list, but they're actually pretty stinking cool, and they're actually fish that I haven't had before, and they're fish that are definitely, I would say, on the not common side. So you'll be seeing those tomorrow, hopefully. And then Friday, we're going to do a species profile on a fish some of us have probably seen before, but I'm excited about it. And then Saturday, you've got a video coming out on your channel. So we have a week full of things to do, which I think is going to be pretty awesome. Thank you so much, Shane, for becoming a primetime partner / primate / primetimer. You have many names when you're part of the group. Yep. When you're part of the group, you get many, many names. We call us a lot of things.
Yeah, so just take your pick.
Okay, so can we get into it? Because that's why people are here. We want to talk about fish tanks and fish rooms and how many is too many and how many is not enough. Well, first of all, just let's cut it short. You can never have too many tanks. All right, let's just take the questions now. Okay. No. Would it be great? You can never have too many. Just load them up. As many as your foundation can support, just go that direction. You'll be fine.
Stack them.
Yeah, as long as your floors aren't falling through, just go with it, man. Just bigger is always better, that kind of thing. You know how it is. No, that's not exactly true. So again, why are we talking about this now? You see a lot of fish tube channels. What's so funny?
I'm sorry, I just found this really, really funny that I just opened the video on my phone and there was a Lowe's ad.
Really? How about that?
Laugh.
It's like they're probably reading our minds.
They know we love them.
Yeah. So, again, we see a lot of times on YouTube, you've got some of the larger channels that have got these really nice fish rooms, really big fish rooms. And I get those comments from time to time like, oh man, it'd be so cool to have a fish room like that. And I want to kind of try to provide some balance as to what people can expect as they add more tanks. Something that I'm sure a lot of you have recognized as you've gone from maybe 1 tank to 2, or maybe 2 to 3, or 3 to 30. There are some things to consider, especially if you're looking at the level of someday it would be cool to have a fish room thing. And it's interesting because obviously I put this subject matter out yesterday when I did the live stream notification. And I was going through, I don't really participate in any of the Facebook fish groups, but I do like to kind of just check out what people are talking about. And there were, in the last couple of days, I noticed 3 or 4 posts of people who are like, anybody else just getting burnt out or overworked from the fish hobby? It didn't used to be like this, and now I'm just getting kind of tired. And I wanted to address that because it can happen. It does happen. It's a common thing, and we can talk a little bit about that. So, and I know that you have some things to say about that at some point too, right?
Yeah.
Just with your little nano nook. So for those of you who aren't 100% in the know when it comes to our fish room, we've generally got around, we usually range between 70 and 80 tanks. Right now we're probably closer to that upper 60s or 70 in terms of the number of tanks. And I think the first thing to consider, whether you're adding 2 tanks or 20, like I said, is there's a cost associated with adding more tanks, as you obviously would expect. And it goes far beyond the cost of just the tank, right? So you've got the cost of the tank and the equipment, and of course the fish and the substrate and the decorations. And that stuff can add up. If you were to look at our fish room, and this is the thing, and by the way, I've got a number of videos that I've done in the description below where I talk about, I'm very open about how much did our fish room cost? How much does it cost monthly to run? I kind of break that down. How much time do we spend maintaining our fish tanks? And we'll talk about that today, but those videos go into a little bit more detail. As well as I've got some videos of some really cool fish room tours that I've done, so you can kind of get an idea of some of these larger, in some cases more high-tech fish rooms that can save a little bit of time. But when it comes to our fish room, and maybe we should, well, a few years ago I probably would have had Joanna close her eyes, or close your ears, not really your eyes. Close your ears so you wouldn't hear this. But I started to do some back of the napkin calculations, back of the envelope calculations.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking about what has the fish room cost us over the last 5 years or so. And it's well north of 20,000, probably closer to 30 grand when you include all of the equipment. And by the way, that's a fish room where I've done most of the work. I've built all my own stands except for one stand in there. I've built them all. When you consider things like all the tanks, the decorations, the fish themselves, the stands, the air system, filtration, lighting. Lighting is really expensive, even if you go sometimes on the less expensive side. Things you don't think about, like, oh, you know what? I'm going to need to have lids on these tanks, or I'm going to have massive humidity. Oh, I need a dehumidifier. Oh my gosh, I might need a space heater. And all of that stuff can get really expensive. And so just know that when you see these large fish rooms, there's a significant upfront cost to building out a fish room that large. And it doesn't even have to be that large. Even if my fish room was half the size, it would have still been in that, it could easily climb into the $15,000 range without a whole lot of effort. So the other thing to think about too is it's not just the upfront cost. As you add more tanks, you have to start thinking about the cost associated with okay, now I'm running more filters. Maybe you're running heaters. Now we have to heat the basement at this point. There's no way we could heat individual tanks. But so you've got increases in electrical costs. All your utilities are going up. Water is going up as well. The supplies that you need, just the everyday supply, even things like dechlorinator. Now you have to start thinking about, okay, well, now I need it in bigger containers and things like that for us. And I think one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough is for people who have really large fish rooms, or I don't know, fish rooms at least our size, you have to start thinking about the maintenance side. And for us, we have labor costs. I mean, our kids are technically prime time Aquatics employees, and we'll talk about the time that they spend. But that's, if I've said this before, if I had to maintain all of those tanks, just me, I wouldn't have that many. I would not have this many, because I don't have the time over the course of a week to take care of 70 fish tanks. I just don't. So when you're thinking about adding tanks, one of the things that you're going to want to consider, obviously, is not only the cost to set up those tanks. And again, whether you're going from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, it doesn't matter. Just know that it's going to cost you more to set them up, but it's also going to cost you more monthly. Every time a lot of the fish tank equipment is not energy efficient, right? I mean, think about this. When you've got a little device inside of a 75-gallon tank, and all the purpose of that device is to make water warm, it's just a straight up big time electricity sucking energy device. And then you've got filters, and they've got the pumps, and all they're doing is just churning water 24/7. Everything that you do in those fish tanks for the maintenance side of things, they're on all the time, right? Then you got the lights kicking on, and all of that is a big drain on energy. And the more tanks you have and the more volume you have, the more water you have to change. I kind of find it, well, it's not really funny, but I don't know if you guys get this. Maybe it's just kind of like our thing, our electric company. I almost feel like they're shaming me. They send us this thing. I think it's like, I don't know, it's like once a quarter, and they say, here's a really efficient person in your neighborhood, and this is how much electricity they use. And here's your average. And then here's you way up here. Like, what are you doing, man? Loser. And I'm like, yeah, well, not everybody's got a fish room with 70 tanks running in their basement, So then you've got all those added costs, and it compounds. And it's just something you have to consider if you start to add fish tanks. And quite honestly, that's one of the reasons why we're so thankful for our channel sponsors. I know that for some viewers, it's like, oh, you got our sponsors. Does that somehow degrade our advice? And I would say no, because the only reason why we have the relationships we have is because we feel the companies, I don't have to defend their actions. I don't have to defend their product, because I truly feel like their product is good, right? So Flip Aquatics, Fritz Aquatics, they have been big time supporters of our channel, and it helps offset the cost, because right now, monthly costs, I did more, you didn't hear this yet. So this could cause actually some marital issues as we go through the live stream. So you might be witnessing some marital strife here potentially. It's a good thing you like fish tanks.
No, I was just going to say, there's just going to be some give and take. Like, oh, really? Well, guess what? You're going to get me a low boy.
Yeah.
That's just what it's going to be.
When I looked at the monthly cost, when you consider everything I've talked about so far, it costs about $1,000 a month to run our fish room. And obviously, for a lot of people, it's like, well, I don't have 70 tanks. I only want 5. But just, again, the point is, consider that not only is it going to cost you up front, but those energy bills and stuff, they do absolutely increase. And as a side note, and I was thinking about this too the other day, I was talking to a smaller fish tuber, somebody who was just kind of getting into it, and they mentioned, yeah, I haven't been posting videos as much because basically I have to wait and earn more money before I can set up some more tanks. And that's another thing to consider too, because I know there's a number of people here who post videos on YouTube, and what you have to understand is these costs, they do add up. And it really is like FishTube, to me, like when you're on YouTube, it's one of those things, like that niche that is really expensive to have a fish room and to be able to show different fish and different biotopes and do different aquascapes and really just be able to produce new content. You almost need a large number of tanks to do that. Otherwise, it's like, well, I've got one tank, here it is. And then what are you going to do? Show the same tank over and over again every single week. That might be cool if it's a cool tank, for sure.
That's the water garden.
Yeah, right. But it adds up. It's a very expensive sort of fish tube, YouTube thing to get into for sure. One of the other things I think that's really important that a lot of people overlook, and I think this is actually where a lot of the burnout comes in, because a lot of people, they can properly assess how much it's going to cost. It's like, oh yeah, okay, dude, I get it. Obviously, if I add 2 more tanks, it's going to cost me, and they're the same size, let's say, it's going to cost me 3 times more, twice as much in energy and to set up the tank and all that stuff, but it's well worth it. The other side of this is the time. Time is huge. And this is something that, obviously, this is a very personal decision for you. So for us, it's worth having the 70 tanks and running those and managing those. For other people, it's like you have to find where is your breaking point. At what point does the hobby become a burden? And that is different for every single person here, right? So the difference between a hobby and a burden can mean the difference between staying in the hobby and just completely getting out. And that's a lot of times what I see in these Facebook groups, where it's cool because it's like, oh, I got this really made me so happy to set up this one tank, and it's really so much fun. Well, if one tank is great, 2 tanks will be twice as good. And so I set up another one, and yeah, that was awesome. And then next thing you know, it's kind of like, well, I started with 1 tank, and then you see this all the time. I started with 1 tank, and 6 months later, I've got 15 tanks, right? And then it's like, then I went to 18, and it was that 15 to 18 where people are like, you know what, I'm tired. I'm getting really tired because I don't have the time necessarily to properly care for 18 fish tanks, or maybe for you it's 4, or for us, when we got close to 80, I mean, it sounds so weird, but when we got close to 80, it was like, all right, let's break some of these down. We don't necessarily need all of these tanks running. We can do a little bit with less, and it actually freed up some time. And it's not just the maintenance time, and that's a big part of it, right? So when you have a few tanks, it's like, okay, I can, if you have 1 tank, let's just say a 20 gallon, you can get away with a 5-gallon bucket. You can get away with a hose and drain it out and take that 5-gallon bucket and dump it out and refill up your tank. All right, that process doesn't take long. But when you start adding multiples, all of a sudden it's like, well, you know what? That 5-gallon bucket, I'm going to be here a long time, and my back is going to actually explode out of my spine. So, or my spine is going to explode out of my back.
Yeah.
So then it's like, well, I got to figure out a different way. So it's like, okay, well, I'll get the Python system, and that works for a while. And then you're like, well, now I've got 8 tanks, and the Python system only allows me to drain 1 tank at a time. That's a problem. So now you're looking, okay, well, I'll just do this tank on this day. And the next thing you know, you're cleaning tanks every single day. And then what happens when you get busy at work, or the kids have to go somewhere, or you know what? You're just tired and you just need a day to relax. And now it's like, I relaxed, and now the next day I've actually got 2 tanks I have to deal with, and that's a bigger issue. So that time in maintaining, I think, is where a lot of people get burnt out. But there's so much more than that. As you add more tanks, now you have to start thinking about systems. Like, I know for our fish room, when you look down there, I've built, with the exception of the stand for the 150 and your Nano Nook with the stands that you bought, every single stand I built myself. That actually, it takes me a fair amount of time to build all these double and triple stands. It's like, okay, so I had to build those. I had to put in an air system, right? Because at that point, you simply, there's going to come a point when you add more and more tanks where hang-on back filters or canister filters or sumps, it's like, I don't have enough electricity going into this room to account for all that, plus all the heaters and lights. So it's like, okay, then I need the central air system. Well, as I mentioned, we can't just clean 1 tank at a time when you've got 70, and probably if you have 20, that's also difficult, or even if you have 10. So now I've got a wastewater system that I had to build in. Even things like that are commonly forgotten, like cutting out the polycarbonate, because it's really expensive to put glass lids on all the tanks. So you got to cut out all the polycarbonate. Maybe you want to paint the backs of your tanks, especially if you've got multiples and you want that kind of look. That takes time, takes money. So it's not just the maintenance side of things. It's just actually getting everything set up too. That can be a fair amount of money. You know what else is time consuming that a lot of people overlook as you add more tanks? I've mentioned this before, but it takes we feed our fish once in the morning and once at night. And combined, I would say it's about 45 minutes a day. So think about that for a second. Just in feeding the fish, that's almost an hour of my 24-hour day. That is just for feeding. That's not, again, any maintenance or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I would say, again, the maintenance aspect for our size fish room, including what you do, how many hours a week do you spend on your maintenance?
On a good week, maybe 2 to 3.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was figuring.
But then maybe once a month, once every 5 weeks, I do more thorough, and that's usually a good part of a Saturday. There's a yeah. Or
So-
if I gotta do a rescape.
Yeah, so let's just say it's 3 hours on average, right? 3 hours a week. Well, then you got the boys down there, and they're probably combined about 12 hours. So we're about 15 hours a week on the maintenance side. That's we run fairly efficient systems, right? We don't have auto water change, right?
No.
And we've actually talked about that because at some point, we're thinking about this more and more. It's like, all right, well, our oldest son, he's 16. He's going to be a junior in high school. It's not going to be a lot more time where he's going to be like, yep, I feel like working in the basement. I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
At some point, you don't have like a 24-year-old son come like, yeah, you just maintain the tanks and, that kind of thing. So at some point, we're going to have to switch over and do some auto water change. And that's something that people have to consider too as they add more tanks. Now, the auto water change doesn't get rid of detritus on the bottom. The auto water change isn't going to keep your sponge filters clean. It's not going to keep your hang-on bags clean. So there's still that kind of maintenance to do as well. Mm-hmm. Space, consider the space. How much space do you really want to dedicate to this? If you're someone who likes to change things around a little bit, like in your living room, or you've got a special room set aside, or maybe you've got a basement, it's somewhat common. I've seen a number of people who are like, yeah, I set up this fish room, but we really needed another bedroom, and the basement was the place where that bedroom needed to be added. Or we changed our lifestyle, and now I want to put some exercise equipment in the basement, but I can't do it with all those fish tanks. So you really have to think about how much space. So even if you're going from 1 tank to 2, do you want to give up the wall space? Do you want to give up space in another room? Are you going to be in that room really to enjoy the tanks? That's another aspect too. As you start to add more, and for a lot of people, it's like, well, I've got 1 tank in the living room, I've got 1 in my bedroom, I've got 1 in the basement, I've got 1 here, I've got 1 there. And it's like, okay, well, how often are you in some of these rooms? Because that's another reason why people get a little burnt out. It's like, oh my gosh, I've got to maintain the tank in the bathroom, and I'm only in there twice a day for a little bit of time. And now I've got the most time I spend in the bathroom is maintaining this bathroom tank, let's say, right? Or maybe that's the way, I've got a tank in the spare in my office. And, maybe you were in your office a lot while you were kind of, hanging out, working from home. And now you're going back to your office at your job. It's like, well, now I'm only kind of going in there to feed the fish and do maintenance. This isn't so great. Right? So there is that point where, at what point does a tank become a burden? One that we're thinking about a lot more lately that really gets overlooked a lot. What happens when you want to leave?
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking for a day, like a week. When you want to go away for a week, and you guys know how it is, just even if you've got a couple tanks, it's like, all right, most fish, if you're going away for a weekend, fine, just leave them. For the most part, unless you've got big meat eater fish, a lot of times we just leave our fish and they're fine for a weekend. But when you start going 5 days or more, it's like, okay, you know what? Now I got to try to find
a fish babysitter.
A fish babysitter, or maybe you've got an auto feeder, which is great if you've got 1 tank, right? Or maybe a few tanks. Mm-hmm. But are you really going to buy auto feeders for 10 tanks? Are you going to buy it for even, 8 or 12 or 15? Probably not. So now, we've kind of resorted to as a house sitter. And that house sitter is really there to feed the fish every day, right? And it's like, well, the house is fine. It's a house. It doesn't need a lot of care. But you can't take your fish to the fish boarding place like you can a dog. It's like, okay, well, we're going to be gone for a week. We can't take the dog. We're going to take it to a friend's house. We're going to take it to the boarding place that we really love or whatever. It's like, all right, just got my 55-gallon under your shoulder. You come slosh it into the vet and set that bad boy down and be like, fill it up. They eat every day. Here's the flake food. I'll be back in a week to pick them up. Like, dude, what are we supposed to do with this thing? So that can be a real big pain. It's not a big deal when you first set up the tank, right? Because you're super excited about, oh, this is awesome. And you get a few more, like, oh, this is great. Mm-hmm. Until you realize one day, like, oh yeah, we've got that really awesome trip planned to somewhere. And wait a minute, what are we supposed to do with all these fish, right? So it's definitely something to think about, right? Like I said, the big thing is balance. What you really have to think about what your breaking point is when your hobby goes into more of a burden, for sure. So what do you got? Any thoughts on the matter of how many tanks? So what's your ideal tanks?
I basically went down. I had a few, and then I went up to 20 some. I think I was 24. Now I'm down to 12.
And that's good for you. That
13. 13 including the kitchen pond, but not including the 20. So I will be up to 14.
14.
And that would, I think I'd like to keep that
right about there.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really is, most of it's about time, right? How much time are you willing to invest? Because once you go over that, man, that's when the burnout happens. That's when you're leaving those messages on the Facebook groups being like, anybody else ever get burnt out from your fish? And how many of you? I'm curious because as people in YouTube, we see it very, very clearly, usually right around April. So right around last month, going into late September, you see, oh, people love fish. People love fish. Right around April, people are forgetting about their fish and they stay forgotten until about September. Obviously, life gets busy in the summer. And that's the other thing you have to consider too is when you're busier, it's not a whole lot of fun cleaning tanks when it's 80 degrees outside and sunny and everybody else is like, hey, man, let's do this. Let's go here. Let's go for a drive. Let's take the convertible out. I mean, we don't have a convertible, but I'd imagine that'd be pretty fun. When we had the Jeeps, it was fun.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you're like, nah, man, sorry.
I'll be in the basement.
I got to clean this 40 breeder over here and scrape the algae off the 55 and feed the fish in the 20. And, oh, yeah, the 5-gallon over there needs to get replanted. And you're like, well, you all have fun. I'll just sit in my house inside and it'll be a great time. So, yeah, things to think about, right?
Actually, Matthew said that he doesn't get burnt out because he has one tank.
See? Because you found... And by the way, that's the other thing too, and I know I've mentioned this from time to time, it's really not even part of the subject, but having more tanks doesn't make you a better fish keeper.
That's right.
Can we just make sure that we understand that? Having more tanks does not make you a better fish keeper. It doesn't make you like put you higher up on the fish community ladder. And that happens a lot. And it happens even like in our fish clubs where it's like, you know what? How many tanks? It's like the first question. I mean, that's like the initiation, right? How many tanks do you have? So why don't you tell us a little bit about you? You stand up and like, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I have 2 fish tanks, and I keep these fish. And I was like, oh, okay, it's 2. And then the person sits down and is like, well, how many tanks do you have? I've got 28. And I'm like, oh, I've only got 2. Right. And then the guy comes along and like, well, how many do you have? I got 52. And then there's always inevitably the guy that comes around and says, oh, you got 52 tanks? That's a good start.
Yeah, they always say
I've got 250 tanks. And then you go to the fisherman look at like, dude, you don't have lights on any of these tanks. I can barely see the fish, and the algae is just covering the whole front of the glass. And there's like old air stones and sponge filters that look like they're from the 1970s that actually don't have any sponge left. It's basically just the center plastic piece and a little bit of what used to be foam.
I still remember in our fish club, they were doing their thing, introducing. There's a bunch of new members coming in. Oh, how many do you have? What do you keep? What kind of fish? And then this one guy who had been there only maybe once or twice before, he came in and he was very quiet and stuff. He would ask people questions. Oh, well, I only have 3 tanks or 2 tanks, something like that. I'm like, oh, that's cute. Okay. Till we found out that one of his tanks was like 800 gallons. And we're like, oh.
And it was built into the wall.
It was custom, and we're just like, all right.
It was one of the coolest tanks I had seen. Mary, Paige, Clint, thank you so much for the red thumbs up, you guys.
Aw, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But yeah, we need to be very clear on that sometimes people get, I don't know if it's like tank shamed or fish room envy or people who have fish rooms just naturally like, it's a bragging thing. It's kind of like having a muscle car where, how much horsepower is your car? It's, it says 400. Yeah, I put a twin turbo super duper jet rocket on mine. It's 1,000 horsepower. It's like, well, can you drive it? Yeah, I can drive it. Well, okay, good for you. So, yeah. All right, let's answer some questions. What do you think? Should we answer some questions?
Sure.
Matthew says an 800-gallon in the wall will look so nice. It really did. And it was aquascape. The guy really knew his stuff. So
yeah. Anybody
who tried to shame him for a couple tanks. Nope.
Bad idea.
Paul said, on a hot, humid North Carolina summer day, doing water changes in the AC is a good way to beat the, all right, that's a good point, Paul. That's, when it's hot and humid outside, I'll tell you right now, in the Chicagoland area in the summertime, it can get very, very humid, and it's just like that sticky hot, and then we don't even have like any really cool scenery to look at least.
Yeah.
Like down south, you've got like cool things to look at, or maybe even some water. It's like, well, here's a field of grass and it's 98 degrees. Yeah, in that case, yeah, you're right. I will just sit there and change out water happily. Let's see here. What else we got? Oh, I'm scrolling all around. Let me see here. And by the way, like I always say, if you put the @Primetime Aquatics, I'll know that you're asking a question. It's a little bit easier to find. Wendy says, I love my tanks in the summer. Basement fish room equals cool temperatures in a house with no air conditioning. Yep, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Our basement we are very blessed in that our basement it really holds temperature very consistently, and it's always done that, and it's not even insulated. I don't know if that's part of the reason why, but and the main wall faces west, so I don't know if that has something to do with it, but in the wintertime, we have one vent down there, and when we turn the heat on, it maintains about 82. Granted, the heat, that's the other thing too. When you get a lot of tanks, you have to start considering heating the room, which means sometimes you're heating the house.
Yeah.
Our house is warm.
It's always warm.
It's kicking, like our temperature of our house in the wintertime is 77, I think. And that keeps the basement, the fish room, at like an 82 ambient temperature, so the tanks stay warmer. And in the summertime, I let it get as high as 78. And then, like, if we're not home, like if everybody's gone, like at work and at school, the temperatures get up to 80 degrees in the house, and then it's set to cool down a few degrees before we get home. But that definitely saves a lot of issues.
Yeah. All right, here I got a comment from Julia.
Yeah.
Brings up a good point. It's not about fish keepers, it's about fish, giving them more space and normal life conditions. It's love.
Thank you. You know, and that's a super important comment that I was going to make that comment as well. You are 100% right, because when somebody gets burned out, and that was the thing I wanted to mention, is when somebody gets burnt out, ultimately it's the fish that suffer. And that is such an important thing to consider. Is if we're here, let's face it, you're a fish nerd. If you're chilling out with us on a Wednesday, and be proud of that. I say that with the utmost respect, and you're one of us. You are absolutely one of us. And it's a cool thing, which means you guys are committed. You are, if you don't understand everything, you're seeking to understand as much as you can about your fish and about their health. And when somebody gets burnt out, inevitably, and I tell my students this all the time, especially as it pertains to school, what happens when somebody gets burnt out is it's not like they automatically recognize, oh, I'm burnt out. This is why. What winds up happening is their schedule is too busy, they're stressed, and they wind up not doing anything really well, right? So somebody who's burnt out and short on time, it's like, well, this thing might be pushing them over the edge, but everything in life suffers a little bit when you're burnt out. And so ultimately, if that happens with fish, and all of a sudden you're letting the tank maintenance go a little bit more, or it's like, you know what? I know I'm supposed to just go down there and feed my 20 fish tanks right now, but I'm really tired. They're fine. They can go today. And it's like, well, but they're fine, but is that ideal? Is that really what we're supposed to be doing to give them their best life? You know, yeah, it might be okay. You're not going to get an ammonia spike, let's say, if you don't maintain your filter properly for a couple of weeks or maybe longer, and it starts to get a little bit clogged. But that reduced water flow, is that ideal for the fish, the inhabitants in the tank? Probably not. Is that murkiness, and you start to get that white cloudiness on the glass, a little bit of biofilm because, you know, things maybe aren't running optimally. Is that really what you want for the inhabitants? And so, such a good point. Yeah, it's about keeping fish in a habitat and watching them thrive. And that's what I think everybody here strives to do. And once you hit that burnout, man, it gets a whole lot more difficult to do for sure. All right, I'm trying to scroll down, and my chat here is all jacked up. Here we go. Fin Wiggles, thank you so much for the jumping dude. Appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here and for being part of the crew. It's awesome having you here. All right, let's see what else we got here. Williamsburg Aquatics. Would you use Prezi Pro for Camelina swarms as a start before you get hands on something better? Truth be told, I haven't had that. I haven't had Camelina swarms in my tank. So I try to be, there's a difference between seeing something in a textbook and learning about it 4 or 5 or 6 years ago and actually dealing with it in a way that, you know, you're dealing with it often. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, if that's going to be beneficial. Maybe somebody who's dealt with it would be someone who could answer that, but I don't want to give you an answer on theory and then be like, oh yeah, you know what, that wound up being a waste of money, or it wound up not being a good thing. All right, let's see here. Scrolling on down. Riddle, to grab Jason or Joanna's attention, yeah, just put the at Primetime Aquatics followed by your question or comment. That helps them, helps us.
Yep.
For
helps
sure.
Our old eyes see it.
Yeah. And mine, yeah, half the time I'm calling out names and you're like, that's not their name.
That's not the name.
I'm trying, man. Matthew, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. My 2 electric blue Acara had fry. Should I move them to a separate tank? The first round of fry were eaten by my Severum after 5 days. Remove parents for a second round. My general rule of thumb is if you have fish in a tank that have fry and it's a community tank, most times the fry go missing. You could have neon tetras in that tank. You could have any fish that's large enough to eat the fry, which is most fish, other than like the smallest of rasboras and maybe like your floralis killifish or something like that. They're going to eat them. Even small tetras can be really sneaky, and they, for the most part, they'll be kept away. But what you're going to see is the group will get a little closer and a little closer and a little closer, and then pretty soon you'll see it like pow, pow, pow. And the electric blue Acara, yeah, they got their fins out and they're kind of looking, but especially if you've got fish that maybe there's just enough light for the fish to see the fry, and the parents are like, you know, they get a little sleepy at night and stuff. I would, if you got in a community tank, I would definitely remove the fry. If it's just the pair and it's their second round, they do get better. They do get better at it. Although my electric blue Acara were especially, I actually think in my case, a female might have been eating them. But they seem to be more prone to eating their fry, at least for me. I did get some to survive, but yeah, removing them, let's face it, if you can remove them to a grow out tank, then you don't have to worry about anything. I know it's kind of a pain to do that, but it's worth a try if you want to see them survive a little bit more. What you got?
Tasha, you got pea puffers today.
Ooh, nice.
What?
Very
How many
cool.
did you get? Did you get a pair? Let me know. Did you name them yet? You don't like my names.
No, please don't repeat
You're
them.
gonna love the pea puffers.
Yeah.
They're named Eenie and Meanie.
Oh, that just makes me cringe. I don't know why.
Why?
I don't know why.
So like the word moist?
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, that was something I
don't
learned. I learned that word. I learned a long time ago. I was listening to some podcast or radio station. It was so long ago, and there were certain words that are not swear words, but that really creep people out, and that was one of them, moist. And I always ask my students, I'm like, does that word creep you out? And sure enough, out of a group of like 24, at least like 6 or 7 hands go, like, oh, please don't repeat that word. And sometimes it's really hard to not use that word in certain contexts in microbiology because you have to talk about environments, but yeah, that's one of those words that people don't like, I suppose. Let's see here. What else we got? Robert, how much of an impact does Pathos really make? Is it possible to have enough to not need a water change to keep nitrates down? It does make an impact. It does have an impact. We have Pathos. I generally try to grow it in some of our cichlid tanks, especially like the bottom 75, our Peacock cichlid tank. We've got a lot of Pathos there, and it does have an impact. Is it going to be enough to reduce the nitrates to a point where you don't have to do the water changes? That partially depends on your stocking levels. I have found that I still need to do water changes in those tanks, and we still do them weekly. It's just the volumes aren't quite as much. But it's definitely worth it. It's a good thing to do. Ty, thank you so much for the super chat. Hey guys, looking to set up an Mbuna tank. In the future, how many should I do in a 75 gallon, and which ones are your favorites? As always, thank you. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Mbuna I love. And for those who haven't kept them, I know, cichlids in general and African cichlids, like, oh, they're aggressive. And Mbuna, some people said that they're really quite aggressive. But we've had our 75 gallon on the channel for a long time. And the nice thing about being on YouTube is if there's problems, you really can't hide them. So if you look at that tank, you'll see the same fish that were in there 3 years ago are still in there today for the most part. I mean, some of them die and stuff like that, but for the most part, they've all gotten along pretty well. Yeah. So in a 75, I think we've done pretty well keeping the numbers up around 20 to 25 Mbuna cichlids. And I think that's a pretty good number when they get full grown. It's going to look a little anemic when they're younger, but when the Mbuna get to be 4, 5, 6 inches in some cases, most of them stay between 4 and 5. It's definitely a full tank. I think the Mbuna would give you the least amount of potential issues. So, I mean, obviously we want to enjoy the tank, right? So with the Mbuna, if you want to start out with something it's like, oh, I really haven't had them. I want to make sure that I'm not dealing with aggression issues as much. Obviously, yellow labs are great. And I think, when you're looking at Mbuna, you can go a couple ways with this. I like to do like a blacked out background to really get the colors to pop. You can use a darker substrate with them or a lighter one, but sand is definitely the way to go. Do some rock work. I know there's debates about, if you don't put any rock work in there, there's no territories, they don't fight as much. Or if you put a lot of rock work in, they've all got their territory and they don't fight as much. If you look at our tank, we've got like a big piece of coral, Texas Holy Rock, couple pieces, and it's been fine. So the yellow labs, I like. I think for a tank like you're looking at with a 75, we want to keep the fish about that size, around 4 or 5 inches or so. I think you would do well with the Pseudotropheus solosi. And we've done species profiles on those, the solosi. They're cool because the yellow labs are yellow. The Pseudotropheus solosi are kind of blue with dark blue stripes. They almost look like Demasoni, only they're not nearly as mean and a little bit smaller. The females get kind of like an orangey yellow color. Rusty cichlids get like a purpley brown, and if they look better on a lighter substrate than darker, so that would be one to consider if it's a little bit lighter. If you looked at our Mbuna tank, we had relatively decent luck with red zebras in that mix, provided that we only had one male. And so they're fine when they're younger, but usually if you're going to do a mix like that, most likely if you're going to keep 20, you're like, okay, I'm going to do 5 or 6 yellow labs, 5 or 6 solosi, 5 or 6 rusties, and then maybe 5 or 6 of something else. The red zebras, I think, are one of the cichlids that if you do get multiple males, you might have to remove some of them and just make sure you have one. But that's a nice, cool orange color that you could do. We had decent luck with the Pseudotropheus acei, which we did a species profile on that, acei. Those are nice. They're relatively mild. The only thing is they get a little bit larger, so you have to be a little bit careful there. What else? Yeah, I think that's a pretty good start. Definitely something to consider. All right, moving on around here. Clint, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Appreciate it. Just rescued a 20. I like it. You rescued a 29. Get this. It has 2 Mbuna, 2 Dempseys, 2 peacocks, 2 common plecos, 3 tiger barbs, and 3 snails. It's crazy town, but I'm stabilizing and finding homes.
Aww.
Wow.
That's a party tank.
That is, and all in a 29. That's really something. I would imagine they're still probably on the smaller side, right? I mean, otherwise some of those fish probably wouldn't have survived. So sometimes that works for a little while. Like, you get them like when they're small, like, I'm just going to go. That sounds, you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like the PetSmart special. That's what you got going on right there. Somebody bought themselves a 29-gallon starter kit and like, I'll take 2 of those, 2 of those, 2 of those, 2 of those. And probably the tiger barbs, they probably start out with like 5 or 6 and they just wiped each other out. And I'll take some of those and give me some snails. And hopefully they didn't do that all at the same time. The employee was like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. They're all going to fit. What kind of size tank? 29? Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's great. They probably went in there and just found fish that they really liked. And yeah, there's a whole lot of things going on there that probably, I don't know if I'd put any of those fish in a 29. Just because of tiger barbs, they would just wipe each other out. If you put less than like 15 or 20 of them, that's not going to fit in a 29 full grown. Those things get actually, for a barb, they get pretty decent size. The Mbuna, I don't have luck in a 29 with them.
Snails are okay.
There you go. Yeah, the snails. Yeah, so you got a tank. So you got a 29 with some snails, and the rest of the fish, you can be like, got to move them somewhere. Let's see here. Dave from Iowa says, I have 2 tanks, soon to be 3, due to platy fry. My last count in my 20-gallon is 25 fry. That's really cool. I like platies. We put the platies in the 55.
Yeah.
We've got the hyphen variatus, which I really enjoy. So those are cool. And that's funny that you mentioned that too, because isn't that how like a lot of people add tanks, I think? is, oh my gosh, I have these fish that bred, and babies are really exciting, and you don't want to see the babies go away. It's like, there is just something so special when you see little tiny baby fish in your tank. You're like, oh, I got to do something with this. What am I going to do? And you go on the internet, and like, oh my gosh, the parents are going to eat the fry. I got to pull the fry out. I'm going to put them in a different tank. I'm going to grow them all up. And then it's like, okay, that's cool. And then you do it again. You're like, well, I guess I just need another tank.
Just one more.
And then you sell them off, and like, well, now that I got these tanks, I can buy something else that breeds. It happens.
Yep.
Let's see. Kyle says, are 2 large sponge filters and a Title 110 too much for a 75-gallon planted tank? Nope. And the reason why I say that is the Title 110, you can adjust the flow, right? So if you've got, let's just say for argument's sake, you had angelfish in that tank. The nice thing about what you've chosen is 2 large sponge filters. What's determining the amount of filtration you get from there and the flow is the air pump. So if you have an air pump that's adjustable, you can adjust the flow there. But you can certainly adjust the flow on the Title 110. So no, is it necessary to have all that filtration? Probably not, but it's not hurting anything, especially with the adjustable flow. You made some good choices in terms of filtration.
All right,
what are you showing me here?
You want a green question?
A green question?
Yeah.
Okay,
this is from Young Pipe Drilla. Did I get that right? It's funny. Okay. I do water changes once a week, and out of nowhere, my tank looks green. I can barely see inside. Best way to fix this?
Well, what you've got there is
tanks.
Green water. And
yes.
By the way,
you.
Yeah. So we did a video on how to deal with green water, but since you've asked the question, I want to answer it for you here. Green water is common, so it's something that happens usually for one of 2 reasons. Well, for 2 reasons. One, lights might be on a little bit longer than what's ideal, and so typically if you've got your lights on for maybe, let's say, 8 hours, and all of a sudden accidentally you ran them for 15, or they're on all day from morning until the time you go to bed, that's a lot of light. The second thing that could be happening is the light's just too strong. And so an example might be what happened with your tanks. And you had this problem periodically when you had all your 2.5 set up. We had like 10 of them in a row on some shelves. And then right above that was a big, giant 72-inch Beamswork light. This thing was huge. It was almost as wide as the 2.5s are long. And they were all stacked lengthwise, front to back. Well, that light generated a lot, way too much light. It was like this far above the surface of the water, and we were getting it was impossible. It was impossible to manage the algae issues. So first thing is light when it comes to green water. Either too much or the lights are on too long. If you don't have plants, one of the easiest ways to deal with that is to shut down the lights and only leave them on when you're feeding. So turn the lights on maybe 15 or 20 minutes before feeding the fish. Put some food in so that they're awake, they eat. About 15 or 20 minutes later, shut them off. The other issue can be a lot of times, what a lot of people get, why they get green water is if their fish tank is near a window and you've got the sunlight coming in. Algae loves sunlight. You can put all the LEDs you want or fluorescent lights you want on a tank, and while that can cause algae, there's just something about that glorious sunlight that makes it so much worse. So that could be another issue. Usually that's in combination with the amount of nutrients in the water, because all of that the cyanobacteria, they need to eat something. And so the other thing that you want to check is your nitrate levels. If you can control the light, and if you can get your nitrate levels consistently, right now, especially right now, because you've got an ongoing issue, try to keep your nitrate levels at like even 15 to 10 parts per million or less. It's going to be a fair amount of water changes, but if you can do that consistently and control the light, you might be in good shape. Now, one of the things too, especially if your tank is not planted, make sure you do gravel vac. Move some decorations around, suck up all the fish waste. Now, if your tank is planted, you can't do that light thing I just mentioned, because then your plants are going to die. It's going to cause a problem. The other thing that people sometimes will use is a UV sterilizer. Now, that doesn't take care of the initial cause, but the UV sterilizer does an incredibly good job of destroying everything it sucks through that's alive in terms of microbes. So a UV sterilizer will definitely take care of that as well. You can use chemicals, but that, again, doesn't address the issue and can actually cause water quality issues later on. So that's some of my advice. I hope it works out. I know it's frustrating. And by the way, it's not green water, of all the different types of colors of water that can happen, like a lot of times cloudy water in general might mean, oh, there's something wrong with my tank that's going to be potentially really bad for my fish. The two that are far less of an issue is when you get like brown water from tannins leaking in from driftwood. That's usually not really much of a concern. And green water, for the most part, isn't something that generally damages your fish in any way. It's just too many nutrients, and now you've got a cyanobacteria. You got a bloom going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You want to hear something funny?
I want to hear something hilarious.
You guys want to hear something funny? This is funny.
Hold on. I want to say thank you to Mark. Thank you, Mark, so much for the super chat. Advice against starting a 10-gallon if I move in a year. So I'm going to answer your question. Go ahead and tell me something funny.
Oh, okay. All right. From 5-2 Moto. I named my tiger Oscar Stick. When people ask, I say it's my fish stick. Hello.
I like that.
I want to name a fish stick now too.
Yep.
That's funny.
That is pretty good. That's pretty good.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Mark, any advice against starting a 10-gallon if I move in a year? No. I've done a video on how to move fish tanks in a 10-gallon. We have moved a lot. In fact, that is a very easy fish tank to move. It's small. You know, you got like a 20-inch fish tank. It's only, I don't even know what it is, like 10 inches wide or something like that. And basically to move those things, it's really easy. You can take out the decorations, take out the filter, try to keep the filter media in probably some type of water just to kind of keep things moving. You can sometimes just keep the fish in the tank, but just lower the water if they're small enough. Lower the water about until there's like maybe a third left, and maybe you just got the substrate in the water. Throw it in the car. Just make sure it's level. It's not sloshing around a lot. Cover the top with some saran wrap. Maybe you got a battery-powered air stone, and they're going to be fine. I mean, in a typical move, if it's just a few hours or something like that, or even a day, you get to where you're going, you fill the tank back up with dechlorinated water, and then maybe you got to drain it again. But a 10-gallon, you can fill and drain those things in a matter of minutes. So, no, I think a 10-gallon is a reasonable thing. Now, if you were doing something larger, a while back, somebody asked me that exact same question, but it was about a 55-gallon. If you know you're going to be moving in a year, would I really want to be setting up a 55 and then tearing that down again? I guess I'm kind of lazy and don't want to do that. So and that actually brings up another good point about when you figure out your breaking point for fish tanks. And it's not something I considered, but if you are in a situation where maybe you're renting an apartment or something like that, or renting a house and you don't know long-term if you're going to be there, it might not be a great idea to be adding 10, 15, 20 tanks if, like, you know you're going to be leaving in a year or two.
That'd be a pain.
I'll tell you right now, we are stuck. I don't want to say stuck. Man, we're stuck here. We're never going to leave. We're just confined to we can't go out. We can't do anything, all because of our fish room. No, but could you imagine, like, if we move, I mean, it'd make for awesome content. Like, I would do one of those, like, shock things like everybody does. Fish room's coming down. I'm done. It's over. Fish room's never happening.
If you ever see that,
yeah,
we're just kidding.
We're just moving or something like that, right? It's like fish rooms. We're never going to see this fish room again. It's over, right? Breaking down all my tanks. It would basically be, I'm breaking them all down, and then they got to move them somewhere. But like the thought, of breaking down 70-ish fish tanks, and here's the worst part about it. You know all those videos I did, or not all, I did a few videos on how to build stands and all that stuff. Yeah, I cut the wood in the garage, but when I actually built the stands, I built them in the basement because there'd be no way to build. Think about it. I can't build a 75-gallon stand or a 125-gallon stand and get it downstairs that kind of go chick, 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 and they're like one of the stairs that come down, and they have a walkway, and then they go down the other opposite direction. I don't have a walk-in basement. So that would mean if I were to move, I would have to break down 70 tanks, and some of these tanks are pretty large.
Yep.
I basically have to destroy the stands because I'm not going to unscrew those things, because once you unscrew it and then rescrew the stands together, I don't trust those that build anymore. So I'd probably have to break the stands down, mostly garbage, rebuild all the stands in a new fish room. That process alone is, it's not worth it to me. It is not worth it. It would probably, like, we would have to buy a house, and then it would probably take me 6 months. No, maybe not 6 months. I don't know. How long would it take me to build all those stands again and the systems? It would probably take me 4 months if I did it by myself, just to get the infrastructure before I could even move the tanks out of the fish room and back into, oh yeah, what a nightmare. So keep that in mind. If you are someone who is moving around sometimes, the more tanks you add, the more you're going to have to break down, and that's not a fun experience. I highly recommend not having to do that. Ricky, thank you so much for the sticker, the little popcorn. I've never seen that one before.
That's cute.
That's pretty cool.
That's
Truth
fun.
Will Out, digging that tea, Jason. Yeah, that's Joanna's creation here, the watercolory shirt. Thank you so much. Watercolor shirt. I like it. It's quickly growing on me.
Creepy.
Yeah, it's real funny. That's my joke for the day.
Wait, here's the question. All right, from Chrissy. Hey, Primetime Aquatics.
So
I have a peacock bass, and I live in Seattle, where the water is hard. Is there a way to get the freshwater bass adapted so I don't get ick on them from stress?
Hold on, I got to think about this. So for one, I haven't kept peacock bass because I don't have a tank large enough to do it. So understand what I'm saying is coming from a position of not having kept them. So I want to be very clear about that. The question was matching the water parameters for the peacock bass. Mm-hmm. When it comes to softening water, there really is only one way to do that effectively long term, and that is to have some type of an RO unit. In fact, we've got, thanks to CoralView, they sent us an RO unit that we're going to be setting up here in the not too distant future. I'll have a video coming up pretty soon. We're going to do some experiments using the RO water, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. Hopefully it'll be a learning experience for everybody, but short of that, a lot of the things like the pH up and the pH down, that stuff can be, that's adjusting your pH, not really your water hardness. Excuse me, but the only way to really soften water effectively is to start adding RO water to your tap water. Now, not 100% RO water, because then you've got no water, you've got no KH at that point, which means you're going to get rapid fluctuations in pH. The trick there is, and I'm imagining with a peacock bass, this is a fairly large tank, which means this is not going to be a fun process, but you would want to start changing the percentage of RO to tap water when you're doing your water changes, and you start very slowly. I always recommend start in a smaller volume of water that's easily controlled, like maybe you go out and get a 30-gallon tote, and you say, okay, what is my tap water? What is the pure RO water? What if I do 75-25 and 50-50 and 25-75? What is that doing to my KH? What is that doing to my pH? And then you have to start also accounting for the fact that your fish is going to produce waste. So it's not an easy, well, it's not super difficult. It's just a little bit time consuming if you want to do it right. Delta Charlie, have you hit your limit for too many tanks? If so, when did you realize it? That's a great question. Did I hit a limit on too many tanks? Yes, I think I have. It's actually not a straightforward question, because while we talked about the number of tanks, the other thing, and I'm glad you asked that question, the other thing you have to consider is not just the number of tanks, it's the volume. Because you could have somebody who's got 10 10-gallon tanks, and if I had 10 10-gallons, I can zip through and maintain those things with a bucket relatively easy, because if I'm doing, let's say, 30% water changes, that's 3 gallons. A bucket can basically do 2 tanks at a time. That's not horrible, even though it's like, oh, you got 10 tanks. Yeah, but that's only 100 gallons of water. If you've got 10 55s, that's a much bigger deal. So the way our fish room is set up currently, I think once we got closer to that 80 tank situation, that became, that was pushing my comfort level. And again, I'm not even the one that's maintaining them, but I also have to be mindful that I've got, even if the kids are maintaining them, that is not their priority. Their priority is school and all the other things that kids normally do. So we don't want them just being people who, let the kids do everything at the expense of their childhood. So that's not the type of parents we try to be. So yeah, I think once we got to around 80, it was like, because at that point we had tanks kind of like under the stairs. We have our grow out tanks. You had 24 going with all those smaller ones. You were clearly getting to a point where you were stressed.
Yeah.
Like I could see it in her. Like it was fun when we set them up, and it was cool to do the aquascapes. But then over time, the frustration was starting to build because things weren't working right. And part of it was the size of the tanks. You had some very small ones.
Yeah.
but it was a lot of maintenance. And that's when we said, okay, listen, this not fun? No, this is not working, right? And you get frustrated. And then she'd be in a bad mood. She'd be down there cleaning her tanks, and I'd hear her, not being in a good mood. And then it's like, well, what are you doing at that point, right? Yeah. If you're down in your fish room, and every time you go down there, you are in a bad mood, or you're angry, or you're short with your family, or friends or something. Not that you really were, but then what's the point? That was supposed to be relaxing for you. That was supposed to be your place where you could just chill out and relax and enjoy things. And if the maintenance has got to be too much, then that's not worth it. But 80 tanks was about the limit. We've since scaled back to about, like I said, upper 60s or 70s. It still fluctuates a little bit because sometimes I get fish that have babies. I throw a quick, it sounds crazy, but I'll just throw up a 20-gallon real fast and put those fish in there, throw an airline for a cycled sponge filter, a light. We've got extra equipment laying around the house. Okay, it's done. So I can set up that tank in 15 minutes. Or I can throw a 30-gallon tote out and set that up in 5 minutes, right? And have everything fully cycled. So I think right now it's pretty good. I could see at some point in the future what I'd like to do is maybe potentially cut down a little bit on the number of smaller tanks and put in a few larger displays at some point. Part of that is really like I want to go through and do some mock-ups of just how large of a structure can I get. I always talk about the basement stairs because they're just like the funny ones. Like, they go down, they have a little landing area, then they go down the opposite directions. Well, that causes problems. But I'd like to do some like 1x1 mock-ups where you take some wood and you kind of mock up a 180. It's like, okay, how would I get a 180 down the stairs knowing that's about to be much heavier and more bulky? Could I do a 210? Could I do a custom-built 8-foot tank that's only 12 inches tall and 24 inches wide or something? So I want to start playing with that a little bit. Problem is right now, wood's expensive, and those mock-ups would probably cost just as much as the tank itself.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened? I went broke on 2x2s, trying to do all the mock-ups. Ran out of money, couldn't buy the tanks. But I know that these tanks will fit down the stairs. So, yeah, that was a good question. Melissa, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Hats off to at Smallscape for her channel. Aww. This donation is for her and her channel. Sorry, dude. Hey, thank you so much.
Thanks,
appreciate
Melissa.
it. We will absolutely allocate that to the Smallscape. Actually, you know what? That would cover all of your plant buying that you did today for one of your future videos.
We were out of dog food, darn it all, so I had to go to Petco. So I came home with some fun plants.
That was a huge surprise.
They surprised me again with some new ones. I might have to have like a weekly plant day.
Weekly plant unboxing. Here's more.
Here's one.
Yeah. Had to set up another tank. We got more fish. Now I got more plants.
It would be like half a shorts video. It'd be like a 30-second video. I got this plant.
Half a shorts, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see here. Dinky Winky Dog. Between 8 tanks and 8 Pomeranians, I've overloaded myself, so I am cutting back to 4 tanks and 4 I truly love. I sent my new one to Joanna on Instagram. That was... Yeah, so I got to show you those because those are some 8 Pomeranians.
Show me because I'm really bad at how to work Instagram.
Yeah, she's...
I'm trying to... How do you pull up your DM? Clint sent you a picture of the tank.
I will do that after.
Okay.
I will show you after the live stream. I got to show you the other pictures too.
Not very techy.
Yeah, but that's a handful. We've got, and same thing here. We've got 2 dogs.
Yeah.
We've got the fish tanks. At one point, we had the lizards and the snakes and all that stuff. And the lizards and snakes are no more, but the dogs still are. So you know, they're still around. Thank you so much, Truth Will Out. Appreciate the super chat. Let's see here. Any way to take a couple tanks with on my Airstream for a 2-month cross country?
What? Lucky.
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah. All right. So what kind of tanks?
So boy, I don't know. So my initial thought was that the fish would get stressed out because they're going to bounce around a lot. Right? They're going to bounce around. Especially if they're in the Airstream, that those things bounce around more than a car does, I think. So that might be stressful. And if you're going on a 2-month cross country, that means you're going to be doing a lot of driving. So I don't know if I would risk it. Even if they were smaller tanks, I probably wouldn't do it just because you're looking at, okay, I've got to do the battery powered air pumps. I got to make sure that the tanks stay in one place. They're not sliding around. And how do I, every couple of days or something, the fish are going to be bouncing around for 8 hours a day while they're in a car. I think it's okay, like if it happens once when you're transporting them from like a fish store, or, you know, maybe they're going through the shipping process, but a shipping process is extremely stressful for fish. Like when they go from, you know, the fish farm to the wholesaler to the pet store to your home, that process is very stressful for them. And so I don't know if I would want to put them through that on a daily basis for 2 months. I don't know if they would do well with that.
What if
kind
you
of
like
thing.
kind of constructed like a riverscape around like a circle, you know, like how in the restaurants you do like that choo-choo train, and they have a choo-choo train. It would be like a riverscape that goes around. So it kind of would simulate a very, like salmon. You could bring salmon, maybe.
Thanks for that. That's why
I have great ideas too.
Yeah, you've got great ideas. So good luck with that riverscape you got going on in your Airstream. Watch. You'll be like, check it out. I did it. They were fine. They loved it.
See it someday.
Yeah, it was like a big swirly thing. Let's see here. T-bone fishes seem to have problems keeping bettas alive. My water parameters are fine, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Not a problem with any other fish, just the bettas. You know, it's funny. I was talking about that with some fellow YouTube people who are into bettas, and we were lamenting the fact that it just seems like betta genetics. And I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think too. It just seems like betta genetics have really gone downhill for a lot of the bettas that you would buy at certainly the big box stores. Not all of them. I mean, we've got some that have been alive for a while, and they're doing well. I mean, we've got Clear Bob over there who's been an awesome fish.
He's the greatest.
But I don't know. I mean, if you're saying your water parameters are fine, which means you've tested, there's no ammonia, no nitrite, your tanks are fully cycled, which means you've got some registerable nitrate that's 20 parts per million or less. Your pH is, let's just say, for argument's sake, somewhere around neutral. A little less, a little more is fine. GH and KH are probably in the single digits, maybe, let's say 4 to 9 at the max, 8. Yeah, that would be what I would consider to be fine for bettas. You know, they are relatively tolerable, but the genetics lately have been not the best, which is unfortunate, I think. So, oh my gosh, we got a bunch of stuff popping up here now. Marty, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Appreciate it. Glad you're here. Appreciate it. And we got Mark, thank you so much. Appreciate it, man. I just came home, started cleaning my tank, and noticed my Acara over a bunch of eyes. That's cool. That's awesome.
It took me a minute to figure that out.
Someone else is, now we got multiple people breeding the Acara. That's awesome. That's pretty cool. Congratulations. That's exciting things. Like I said, there's very few things in fish keeping that get as exciting as when your fish make you a grandpa or a grandma. Hold on.
Wait, you have to read the continuation.
Meant to say eggs. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right?
Eyes,
eggs. Thank you again for the super chat.
I had a picture going through my head.
But you know what?
Blinking eyes.
That is really awesome. When you've got fish that are going to have babies and you're going to be a grandpa or someone's going to be a grandma, that's exciting stuff. You kind of feel like you accomplished something even though it was the fish that did it all. But that's really cool. Congratulations. Zach, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate it. I really want to get my first tank. Okay. What do you think of a 10-gallon tank with 8 cardinal tetras, 1 bristlenose pleco, and maybe a few amano shrimp? So first of all, I like, for new people, I always recommend one of 2 sizes, and I think the 10 is one of them, so a 10 or a 20-gallon. I like the 10-gallon tank, especially for someone who's getting their first tank, because it's small enough where it's easy to maintain. You do have some legitimate stocking options. The fish that you've selected, the 8 cardinal tetras are fine. The amano shrimp are going to be fine. The bristlenose. I do sometimes keep bristlenose in a 10-gallon, but almost always with the intent to move them out to a larger tank. So I generally kind of grow them out in a 10-gallon to keep some of our 10-gallons cycled. But then I usually move them out to at least a 20. If you're looking for like a cleanup crew with that mix, instead of the bristlenose, might I make a suggestion? There's another type of pleco that stays a little bit smaller, and that's the clown pleco. Really they're actually better looking compared to the standard bristlenose. Mm-hmm. They're really cool. They're kind of like dark brown with some light brown zebra-y like stripes, which are really nice, and they stay smaller. So instead of the bristlenose Pleco, maybe look at the clown Pleco. If those are not available and you still want some type of an algae-eating organism in that 10-gallon, you could start going the snail route, especially mystery snails. So they generally do a pretty good job. You can look at the Nitrate snails as well. But yeah, that's a good, solid mix. So very nice. Congratulations. Wait. I hope it works out.
I saw my name twice. Don't move.
Okay,
wait,
all right.
Wait.
I didn't move.
All right, hold it still.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, let's see. First
Here.
one, Canisteo Valley Cichlids. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Hey, Jason, it's you.
No,
You
it
better
says-
treat Joanna right. Giggle.
Wait, where does that say that?
Right there.
Oh, I'm looking up here. It says
Yeah,
Joanna,
I
small
read
scape. I saw
backwards.
before I knew she was Jason's better half. Ha ha ha.
Oh,
See, look
did
at
you
that.
really?
That's pretty cool.
Aw, thanks.
Found Primetime Aquatics before us, maybe. Hey, Jason, you better treat Joanna right. Well, we'll
Yeah,
see.
just-
I can't promise anything. It's just, I don't know about this one sometimes.
I know.
She says some crazy things.
I do. It's usually about
Yep.
plants.
Yep, and you sometimes just got to take it all in. Oh, Bentley's here. Bentley, how you doing, man? Glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. Let's
Howdy,
see.
howdy.
Robert asks, have you had issues with your Oscars eating smaller fish if you're keeping the Oscars well fed? So the 125 with the Oscars, I had 3 of them in there originally. 2 of them, one of them jumped, one of them died. I've got Chaz, who's actually, he's not doing well right now. He's got a pretty serious case of bloat. So we're trying to deal with that, but man, it's one of those parts of fish keeping where you're like, man, this is not fun. Because he's one of my favorite fish. But anyway, to answer your question, Oscars, it depends on the Oscar, and it depends on what you're feeding them. In that 125, and I've told that story a number of times, and I've told it in some videos as well, the OBs in that tank will breed in there, and they will spit out fry. And for the most part, when I had Timmy, which was the large 18-inch tilapia, and Chaz, which is the Oscar, they, for the most part, left those fish alone because they were just way too small for them to mess with. So it kind of depends on your Oscar, right? So if your Oscar is a 4-inch Oscar, those smaller fish are going to be more enticing because it's going to fill their belly a little bit more than if you've got a 12-inch Oscar or a 13-inch Oscar, and now it's looking at those little tiny fry being like, yeah, I can go eat them, but it's going to be hard to catch them, and I'm really not going to get much out of it. So part of it could be the size discrepancy. The other thing is, yeah, they're going to probably pick off some, but we had really good survival rates. Now, is it something I recommend? Like, oh, yeah, set up your breeding tank with an Oscar. Like, thanks a lot, man. I put my, $5,000 fish. I bred them. They had a bunch of fish. It was going to make me a millionaire, and my Oscar ate them all because you said it was going to be okay. It can, yes, they're probably going to pick some off from time to time, especially if the Oscars are a little bit on the smaller side or the size discrepancy is not as great. But it can also work. But it's not something I do on purpose. I wouldn't purposely breed fish in an Oscar tank because it doesn't always work. What you got? You're looking at me like you have something cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Kathy says, my goal is 10 fish tanks and a pond. LOL. My goal is 10 tanks and 10 ponds. That's me.
10 tanks and 10 ponds, huh?
Yeah, they're coming.
That'd be cool. But 10 tanks in a pond?
Laugh now.
That would be pretty awesome. That's the
is.
one thing where we live. We can't have a pond. That's why we don't. At least not like a traditional pond. Not like.
That's why you don't see us having a monster pond.
Yes, because, well, one, we don't have the space in our living quarters for a monster pond. The backyard's just not that big. But we're not allowed where we live to have a pond like that, like a permanent one. So that's why if we did, we
tub ponds.
Yeah, we definitely have one. But alas, it's probably good because knowing us and the way that we act, it wouldn't just be one pond. Like you'd see like that one guy who's Greg Whitstock.
Like Greg Whitstock.
Yeah, he's got like, this used to be my house, and
Brian.
his entire gigantic thing was just a huge. It wasn't even a pond. That was a lake.
You should see Brian's. His not his sidekick because he's got his own thing. Team Aquascape. Brian.
Yeah.
You should see his backyard. I want that bad.
That would probably be us. He'd be like, oh yeah, hey guys, we just got 3 acres of land. And be like, where's the actual grass? No.
Well,
we put a lake in.
Half of it has to be garden. I'm sorry.
Well, then you could put garden somewhere else. You in the front yard. The backyard would be a lake. Be like, what do you got in there? Koi? No. We put a shark in there.
Oh.
But you live by an ocean? No, we have the salt water trucked in from the Pacific Ocean. Don't go in there or you're going to not make it out. What do you feed those things? I don't know. Whatever animals are running around the neighborhood. Mark, thank you so much again for the super chat. I can't wait to see you too in Florida. My girl and I love you too. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Looking forward to it. It's coming up in less than a month already. So the Aquashella in Florida. And yeah, it's going to be cool to see everybody.
This girl. All right. Hey, Ikea.
Okay.
All right. Mark was so excited he forgot to ask what the heck to do with the eggs. They are in a 10-gallon bare bottom tank for quarantine. By the way, we will see you guys in Orlando for Aquashella. Woo! See you then.
That's going to be cool. Yeah, we're very much looking forward to seeing you guys and anybody else. It's the reason why we go. The reason why we go to these things is to meet people that we just see names, right? A lot of times in these chats or in the comment section, then we get to match the names with the face that. Yay. And people always see a lot of the other creators and stuff like, dude, did you really just spend 10 hours at the table? Like, well, that's why I'm here, man. The only reason why I'm here is to meet people who watch the channel and hang out and stuff. So
yeah,
it's going to be awesome. Can't wait to see you. Okay, so wait, the question was so excited I forgot to ask what the heck to do with the eggs. So one, if they're in a community tank, you're going to have to eventually remove the fry or the other fish. The parents are with electric blue acara. One of two things is going to happen the first time they have fry. One, they're either going to eat the fry after they hatch, or they're going to raise them and it's going to be okay. Don't be surprised if they try to munch down on the fry. Now, if you want to avoid that, you can always remove the fry and put them in a grow out tank. I tend to use, especially with the fry when they're really tiny, I tend to use a smaller tank, like even a 5.5 gallon, but you really want to have cycled filter media in there so you don't get an ammonia spike. The smaller tank also allows you, once the egg yolks are gone, so when they hatch, they're going to have like a little egg sac, and they're going to go through that first. So they're not going to eat until that egg sac goes away, and then you feed them live baby brine shrimp. And then as they grow, you can move them out of a 5.5 into something larger. So a lot of our tanks are 10-gallon grow-out tanks. That works. If it's just the electric blue acara, you can leave them in there, raise them, and put live baby brine in there a couple times a day. That's generally what we do. If you've got other fish in that tank, again, anywhere from tetras up to any other types of fish, they will eventually eat most of the fry. So it just depends on your situation, what you want to do. But the safest thing to do is make sure that the fry are on their own, if it's possible. Second best thing is to leave them with the parents, especially a lot of times they do well, but every once in a while they'll eat them. If they do, don't get too heartbroken, because usually if electric blue acara or just a regular acara, if they breed and they do wind up eating the fry, they're going to most likely breed for you again. And as they get better at their job of being parents, they realize, wait a minute, man, we weren't supposed to eat our kids last time. I know it tasted good, but I don't think we're supposed to do that. Let's try to see what happens if we don't eat them. And then often they survive. But if there's other fish in the tank, they'll try to protect them, but the other fish, they just get sneaky. Just too sneaky, man. But good luck. That's awesome. Let's see here. Our equestrian, do you think I should have live plants for my betta tank?
Yes.
Yeah,
there you go.
Well, so here's the thing. You know, we're talking about tonight. The theme has been, what's the breaking point? When does your hobby go from enjoyment and being a hobby into a burden? That's not just the number of tanks. It can also be the types of fish that you keep. And maybe you've got fish that are too aggressive. They're not getting along. That is a very quick way to go from my hobby was a relaxing, awesome thing to my hobby is now a burden, is when your fish are fighting. The other thing that can happen is my hobby was fun. I added these live plants. They all died on me. It caused an algae outbreak, and my water quality started getting all nasty because the plant leaves were all dying. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, it's fun. Once you get into live plants, if you haven't had them before, start with the easy stuff. So we did a video on beginner plants a long time ago. But most of what you do is beginner plants for the most part. Mm-hmm. Anubias.
My fave.
Yeah, what else?
I love Anubias. Crypts. Mm-hmm. Crypts do really well for us. I know for some people they don't. They do melt, when you first get them.
Sometimes, not always.
Frequently, but that works well. well, for a betta, so Jungle Val, I really like Jungle Val, but not really there. You may really like S. repens. A lot of people have good luck with that, as well as Bacopa, generally people have good luck with as well. Those are generally kind of like my go-tos.
Yeah.
And then, of course, floating plants. You cannot go wrong with floating plants. So,
as long as the betta has access to the surface of the water.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You don't want to cover the...
That's something like hornwort. It's just sometimes it's just fun just to see green stuff growing, and oh my gosh, there's green stuff and it's alive and it's growing and it's not duckweed. This is so cool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's a nice mix. Like, I mean, are you evil if you don't have live plants with your bed? No. Of course not. But it's just fun. You could. I would, if I were going to pick one, I would pick Anubias. I think.
And well, you can glue it. You can just glue it. You can attach it. You can wrap it to a log or to a rock, or it's very, very user friendly. Some of the stem plants could be a little tricky if you try and bury them and they die maybe, or they want to come out of the gravel. That can be a little tricky, especially if it's your first attempt. But yeah. You
know, it was funny because when you said the word log, song popped, and don't tell anybody, the song popped into my head. It's log, it's log, it's big, it's heavy, it's wood. It's log, it's log. It's better than bad, it's good. Everyone loves their log. You're going to love your log. What's that from?
Welcome to my world.
You are, if you know that one, you are seriously awesome.
Boy.
The log song. Yep. Fish Room Fever. Glad you're here. Thank you so much. Appreciate the super chat.
That's a fun name.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Wait, thank you. I've got one for you here from Felicia.
Okay.
Oh wait, maybe it's mine. You wouldn't even know. Okay. Rescaping my 20 long with lows, rocks, and wood next week. Woo-hoo. Sweet. What kind of Anubias is your fave? I don't think you would have. You don't have a favorite.
No, I don't have a favorite. I like them all.
Yeah.
You can comment on that though.
It would be really hard for me to name my favorite, but I would probably start with Anubias Nana Petite Micro. Micro is my absolute favorite. Super, super, super tiny. I do have some of that. And then Anubias Nana Petite, of course, because I'm small scape. I love little miniatures. But I also like the monsters. I love Gracilis. Is a beautiful plant that I have in one of my tanks. And Coffeefolia I love. So those would be some of my favorites. But Gold Coin is really cool too.
So Canisteo Valley cichlids. Jason, are y'all going to Orlando? Yes, we will be. Our plan is to hit all the Aquashellas this year. So Orlando is happening in June. We've got the Chicago one happening in August, which we're only like 45 minutes away. So that one, we don't have an excuse for that one. Nope. And then Dallas in the fall. So our plan is to hit all of those. Plus, I want to hit some of the smaller things like, and I don't know if 100% on the smaller ones like the ACA. I would really like to go to the OCA, Ohio Cichlid Association extravaganza that they do. So I'm trying to. I even want to go to the Cataclysm one in Wisconsin, but we'll see. Hopefully I can hit them all. But the Aquashellas are a pretty much for sure thing, barring any issues with like travel or any problems that occur, especially as we move further out into the fall, as long as everything is okay with worldly events and everything we've been dealing with for the last year. The plan is to go. I saw a question I really wanted to answer.
Okay, while you're looking for it, Ray Cooper wanted to know, can I super glue Anubias to a nylon stocking filled with soil? Will roots grow into it? If you super glue it, yes, they probably will, because I've had Anubias have extremely long roots, and they will find that's what they do in nature. They're kind of holding on to rocks in rivers so they don't get swept. So they're really good at kind of reaching out. And so, yeah, the roots will, obviously the rhizome will stay above, but the roots will grow into and onto whatever it's on.
Yeah, and I don't know necessarily about the, what was it, soil in a nylon sock?
Yeah, I would assume, is that actual soil, or is it sand, gravel, or is it like a
I'm assuming it's soil, because otherwise the sand would just be in the substrate. If that's the case, you just have to kind of test. I would test that method out, and maybe someone's done it, I'm just not aware, but I would test it out in maybe like a bucket of water or a tote, just to make sure that some of that soil is not going to make your water all nasty. Mm-hmm. Most likely it won't. It'll probably settle, but you never know. Robert's got to follow up. That Oscar is 3 to 5 inches, and he wants to grow it out in a 210 with his clown loaches. The clown loaches are his ultimate gem. That's a combo that people keep together, and I don't know if I would hesitate to do that, but the issue is going to be your Oscar is going to grow much faster than your clown loaches. All right, clown loaches, generally speaking, don't grow extremely fast. I would say they grow a little bit on the slower side, even in a 210. There's a concern that I would have with that mix. Is your Oscar, that 3 to 5 inch Oscar in a 210 will be 12 inches within a year, almost guaranteed. The clown loaches, I don't know. Actually, I don't know how big those things were. Now, if the clown loaches are, oh, you said 3 to 5 inch clown loaches. Those 3 to 5 inch clown loaches aren't going to be a whole lot bigger in a year, even in a 210. Maybe they're going to be 4.5 to 6 inches. Those smaller clown loaches will fit in an Oscar's mouth. Will he go after them? Maybe not. Clown loaches tend to be pretty energetic. The issue is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, knowing how if you love clown loaches, is they've got those hooks behind their gills. And if the Oscar tries to eat a clown loach and they stick those things out, the Oscar's not going to be able to swallow the clown loach, and you're not going to get that clown loach out of his throat without killing one or both of those fish. So I don't mind the combo when the clown loaches, because clown loaches can get very large. I mean, you can easily, I've seen easily 12, 13 inch clown loaches. When they are large enough not to get eaten, the combo generally works just fine. The issue is going to be how fast that Oscar is going to grow relative to the clown loaches within 12 months. So that's just something to keep in mind, why I might be a little bit hesitant to do it.
All right, I have a request. If I can get him to edit it. James wants an eeny meeny video.
If she says that, I'm not. If you want to do it, that's on you. But as long as I don't have to hear those names,
if you don't hear it,
those
what
are
if
the
you
worst
just
fish
see
names
it?
I've ever heard.
No, it's not. They're so cute.
No, it pains me, Joe.
How
Thank you.
Teeny and tiny.
That's better. Joe, thank you so much for becoming a primetime partner, prime timer,
Welcome.
primate. You're all of those things. You're in the group. You're in the circle. By the way, wait, nobody got I don't see any comments about my song.
Good.
The log song. The log, it's big,
No.
it's heavy, it's wood.
Nobody
It's
wants
better than
it.
bad, it's good. Everyone wants the log. From Blammo.
Oh,
Hold on, I'm scrolling
Amanda,
on down.
wait. Amanda, were you asking me if any plans to add puce to my tanks? Yes, there is plans, except I can't usually get my hands on it. Every time I do, they're either sold out or, so.
So wait, you get your hand.
Currently,
Oh, here we go.
I have
All right.
some in one tank. Very
Here
small
comes
amount,
all the
but
comments.
I need, more.
More importantly, there's a...
Oh,
Myrtle,
there we go.
Dude, sometime you got to go to some of these fish things, and we're just going to have to sit around and watch cool stuff, because you always get the movie references. So,
Boy.
yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for our mental connection here, but
Tasha
look at everybody's got it. Joe,
Snail Team 6 got it.
D3's got it. Snail Team, Zach, Wolfden. I mean, all right, we got some cool people here watching this stuff if they know Ren and Stimpy quotes, because
Yeah.
a whole bunch. Look at all of them are rolling in. All right, I've got some faith in this group. There's a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, Ren and Stimpy. Yep. Don't whiz on the electric fence. That's the advice that I got. Well, I mean, when that show came out, I was in my 20s, so I'm not so sure I should be quoting it, but it's a good show. I can't help it.
Good job remembering way back when.
Yep. Just like, all right, Kowalski, what do you want on your sandwich? Meat. Yep. Finn Wiggles, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. I'm a lumberjack, and I'm okay. I sleep all night and work all day. I cut down trees. I eat my lunch. I like to pick wild flowers.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
Nice.
That's nice job. I love it. I absolutely love it. Very cool. Gina's, what happened to our jumping guy? Gina's got a jumping guy. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I don't think I've ever seen the little jumping peach pear baby jumper guy. That's awesome.
What he is, maybe a lemon.
I don't know.
It might be a lemon.
Could be a lemon. It could be a squeezy lemon. Thank you so much. D3, thank you so much for becoming a partner. Appreciate it. You guys will see some new fish tomorrow. Some crazy stuff, too. Stuff I wasn't planning on getting.
Bonnie's Peep Buffer is Kermit.
Now, that's a great name.
love-
That I could go
I used
with.
to have two dwarf frogs, and one was Kermit, and the other one was Cornelius.
Yeah, those names I can handle. I can handle those.
Yeah, Kermit and Cornelius.
Let's see here. Scrolling on down.
Logs.
Let's see. I Besom 7. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. You know you have a tank problem when you run and buy a 3-gallon for a single Blue Dream shrimp hitchhiker found when tearing down a quarantine tote.
Aw, that's a good fish parent.
That's not a tank problem. That is just a
love.
responsible, loving human being who appreciates life. And we encourage that around here. Mm-hmm. We encourage your 27 pieces of flair.
I bet that was a very, very happy little shrimp.
Yep. 3-gallon all of themselves,
like,
just kind of stretching out. You see it just kind of be like putting his little feelers behind his head, be like, yeah, I'm just going to lay down here and enjoy this view in my gigantic living area. Yep. Very cool. Nice. All right, we're scrolling. Oh my goodness. T-Bone Fishes, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you for your opinion on the betta situation. Well, happy to provide an opinion. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, let's see what else we got going on here. Ames Spiritfish, best show, Ren and Stimpy. Oh, Stimpy, my tooth, it hurts. I could go on and on. Yeah, we could just do Ren and Stimpy quotes all night long.
Clint's already got your Office Space that you shot in there.
Office Space, love it. Yeah, Clint's another one. He always gets those things. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Amanda says, now just need a few more shrimpies. So cute. I agree.
Oh, yeah. Shrimp are so cute.
They surely
I love
are.
Them.
They surely are. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. How about we do a few more? We'll do a few more questions, and then we'll call it a night because it's getting late, and I'm sure people have things they want to do, like close their eyes and go to bed.
Aww.
You know?
Jennifer has 3 guppies, and they're named Inky, Blinky, and Clyde.
Those are good names.
Those
I like
are
it.
Cute names.
Yep,
I like Inky and Blinky. That's cute.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. We're scrolling on. I'm losing all my scrolling ability here for some reason. Things freeze up. I don't know why it does that. Let's see. Michelle says, is there anything in Michigan you can come to? I think the closest we would get to Michigan, and the closest thing to that I'm aware of right now, will be if
Mackinac.
Well, I mean fish related.
I'm just saying.
Would be the OCA, and it's worth it. It's worth the trip. The OCA is in the Cleveland area. It's not going to happen to the best of my knowledge. And I put when we did the whole fish things that are happening in the near future, that's not supposed to happen until somewhere in, I don't remember exactly when, it's like October or November of this year. But if that happens, and like I said, everything is okay, and it seems like we're headed that way. With the vaccination rates and everything that's going on, and case counts going down. Hopefully, that's not just a product of the summertime, and it is in fact due to awesomeness. But yeah, if that happens, then it's going to be, I'm looking forward to hitting the OCA in the fall, and that's definitely one worth going to, because that one is cool because it's like a big giant fish swap / what do we call those things? Flea market. It's like a fish flea market. People are selling fish out of their rooms. It's really cool. It's a fun time. All right, let's see.
Okay, wait. There's a chemical question for you here.
Chemical question. Is this going to be one I can answer, or is it going to be some?
All right. It says, let's see. This is from Robbie. Listening to Dr. Tim's podcast, he said nitrifying bacteria only consume NH3, not NH4+. I have been trying to validate by checking research. No definitive answer yet. Any ideas?
Nitrifying bacteria only consume UIA. I believe what he's saying is correct. And I'm trying to go back from memory. The more important question is the NH4 doesn't matter. When it comes to fish health, it's not toxic. So when I did a video on why our ammonia test kits are often lying to us, because most ammonia test kits measure total ammonia nitrogen, TAN. That includes both. So when we're getting those concentrations, and that's, by the way, that's dependent upon pH and water temperature. And so there's like a calculation table that I include in that video. But the UIA, the unionized ammonia, that's the NH3, that's the stuff that's dangerous to fish. The NH4 is not. And so if that's present, it's really not going to contribute to health issues unless a couple things happen. And that is the temperature, the water temperature increases, as well as the pH. But when the pH is low, usually as we start to approach less than 7, certainly getting into the 6s and the 5s, it's you almost don't get the unionized ammonia at that point, or very little of it, I should say. So, yeah, that's kind of how that all fits together.
All right.
What else?
Sierra wants to know where do I find a 7-gallon tank online? I've been admiring your small scape tank. Oh, thanks. I would love to make one myself. The 7-gallon tanks we got from Flip. He was like moving to like more seamless tanks, so we got the one with the black silicone from him. Oh gosh, I don't know if I've like run across. It's kind of an odd size. 7.
But they are available. I do see them on Amazon. They're expensive on Amazon, I'll tell you that right now. But the Flip Aquatics had them. I don't know. You could check his website and see if he might. I don't know. At one point he had them on the website, the 7.5 gallons. The other thing to do is, if you're going to be, one of the things that I recommend to everybody, when you go to, if you ever go to like the Aquashellas or some of the larger shows where they have a lot of display tanks, sometimes people don't want to take those tanks home. And so one of the things that you can do is find out if they're going to be selling them, especially those types of 7.5s where you can, if you're driving, obviously if you're flying or something like that, it's like, yep, I flew across country, but I also just bought this 200-gallon display tank, and I'm going to go ahead and see if I can carry it on the plane. That might not work so well, but it's something to consider, because those 7.5s are very common display tanks at a lot of these shows. But check Amazon, check Flip Aquatics. Amazon, like I said, I know they have them, but they get a little bit expensive. So
Flip only has like 4-gallon tanks.
4-gallon, but are they the square, like
Yeah.
the 7.5s, just smaller? Okay,
Yeah.
Makes sense. Lonnie, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Great stream. Worth it to see Jason cringe at the M word. I also vote Jason commentates the eeny meeny vid. Oh, you just made me say it. Oh, that's not
I love it.
fair.
Thank you.
You made me say it. Thanks again, as always. Oh, I was reading. I wasn't recognizing. You know what's weird about the M word? Moist, by the way. That didn't used to creep me out, but now that I know it creeps people out, it kind of makes me uneasy and uncomfortable, because I know it's just a weird word that some people don't like, and I don't know why. But now I don't like it because I know that it makes people uncomfortable. So it's just a weird thing. All right. Well, thanks for making me say that word, because now I had to say the word and I had to say those words, and it's just, whew. Now everybody's saying, I'm not going to say it in the chat. Like, if you guys start typing that thing in the chat, I'm not saying it. John and Lisa at KG Tropicals. Oh yeah, there's John and Lisa.
What?
So do we have any big plans for Aquashella? John? Yeah, dude, we do have big plans. We're going to hang out, and then we're going to meet all the people like we did. Remember how cool it was at the last time that John and I and Lisa and Joanna got together? It was at the Aquatic Experience in fall of 2019.
In Joyzy.
Yeah, and we had the big giant booth. That was so much fun.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
Dude, it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, so
I think what we should do, this is crazy, okay, John? I think we should talk fish. Yeah.
I vote that we just whatever, right? But yes, I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be cool, hanging out at the Fish Tube booth, and John and you're going to be, John and Lisa are going to be speaking. They're actually going to be presenting at the Orlando one.
We're going to heckle.
And it's going to be their first time.
Okay.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to sit in the front row.
Yep.
And we're going to make faces, and we're going to say all kinds of things. And we're going to ask a lot of really hard questions that have nothing to do with your presentation. So
we should probably wear disguises, though.
Yeah, we're going to wear disguises so that you don't know it's us. And it's going to be great. So if you are going to Orlando and you get to see John and Lisa do a presentation, I'm looking forward to it. That's
do a shirt toss.
Yeah, you got to.
We're going to be in the front. I can reach really high.
You got to throw stuff out there. Maybe get one of those things like they have at like sporting events where they like the slingshots.
Yeah, the baseball games.
I could see really good idea, man. I slingshotted somebody in the face with a shirt. The thing was going like 200 miles an hour. The guy was only standing 5 feet away. Yep. Like, hey man, sorry. It was just an idea. You're the ones that did it. But yeah.
Tell Lisa I said hi.
Yeah. Hope you guys are doing well. Really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll get to meet all the people hanging out.
The people.
The people are coming. The people are coming. Yeah, it's going to be cool. Looking forward to it. All right, let's see here.
Funniest thing would be to take, this is Myrtle. Funniest thing would be to take poster board sized pics of both Jason and John's faces and put them next to each other. Try to match the real person to the beard.
I don't know, John, if you get this, but every once in a while I'll get somebody who comments on a video like, I didn't know you had 2 channels, John, or it'll be something like that. Or like, wow, John looks a little different today with his beard a little bit longer. Like, ha ha ha, yeah, I've never heard that one before. You guys are real funny. Katie Tropicals, haha, you'll be sitting with all the other YouTubers that plan to heckle us. Yeah, just be ready. You guys be ready.
Sorry,
it's going to be great.
Not sorry.
It's going to be great for us. It'll be cool. Like, look who's here.
Who?
Xanadu.
It's Xanadu.
Glad you're here. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Cheers.
It's been a little while since I've seen your name pop up. Glad you're here. Let's see here.
Oh, Phil Agree wants to know, how do I prevent inbreeding in fancy guppies?
Separate them. Otherwise, you can't. So guppies are, in a way, guppies are like the rabbits of the fish world. So if you know, you got males and females, the male's going to be like, well, I know you don't look quite like me, but you're looking good enough. And sometimes they just have babies and enjoy the hybrids, but separate them. Obviously, if you've got some, you know, and I know that's a problem. So if you've got some nice strains and you want to keep them separate, or you want to breed, you know, line breed them, you got to keep them separate. Otherwise, they are absolutely going to inbreed. And sometimes it's fun, and especially with guppies. People don't get all hung up on guppy hybrids because it's like, well, that's what most guppies are. And you're just like, holy cow, these things bred together. And it turned out that they bred some really awesome fish. I had pink flamingo guppies and some common guppies I got at like a local fish store. And there was one other type in there. And they gave us some really cool hybrids. I think some really pretty fish. And sometimes those are highly desirable. But if you don't want that to happen, separate them. It's the only way. All right, let's do a couple more, and then we'll call it an evening, like I said before.
Snail Team 6 has a question.
Okay.
An albino common pleco should keep up in growth with my Oscars? Probably,
yeah. Most likely. It depends on where they're at right now. The only issue is going to be if they're all really small. But usually the albinos, at least for me, have tend to grow a little slower than the regulars do, the regular browns. But I mean, I've got a ton. My Oscars leave plecos alone, period. Bristlenose, that is. So I've got, in that 125 where we have the Oscar, I've probably got at least 6 to 8, maybe 10. I don't even know how many, but I've counted at times at least 6 to 8 brown bristlenose plecos that are only maybe 4 inches or so, and I don't know, my Oscar just ignores him. I mean, again, he's well fed. There's rock work in there, so that's the other thing too. And I know you've got a common, so it's a little bit harder for them to kind of hide, but when they're smaller, that will certainly help out if you've got some hiding spots for them. But the common plecos tend to grow pretty fast. Oscars grow fast. The Oscar might outgrow them to start, so just keep an eye on it. It's always better if you can start that situation out with like maybe the 5-inch common pleco and maybe like a 3-inch Oscar. That's probably a better way to do it than like, oh, they're both a couple inches, because the Oscar, at least initially, is going to outgrow the pleco. But ours have left them alone. Let's see here. Melinda says, I don't know about more tanks, but finding the 40 talls is definitely the struggle. 6 flower horns, 6 tanks on my rack. Yeah. That's what you do with flower horns, right? You just you buy them. They're beautiful fish. I mean, they got all the color, all the personality, but you try to mix them, and that's when problems happen, right? But you find, like we talked about earlier, you find your comfort level, and once you've reached that, you go 1 tank beyond it, and sometimes that can be a little too much. Let's see here, what else we got. The Gamer 2299. I kind of want to make a 65 gallon for some ranchers. Should I do it, guys? 65 gallon. So those ranchers can get pretty big, right? So maybe a 65. And again, it depends on the 65. You're probably talking about the 3-foot 65. That's basically like the same footprint as a 40 breeder, just taller. Probably do a couple, right? 1 or 2, just to be safe. Any more than that, you might start getting a little cramped. You might have to start moving some out later on and get a second thing going on there, a second tank. But I like the goldfish. Like I always say, it's one of the things I miss. When we had those comic goldfish, I look back on that old video, those older videos we had, and I really miss those fish. At some point we will do something.
Just need a monster pond and get some more.
like I said, monster pond. If I ever do a monster pond, we're getting saltwater sharks, so it's going to be dangerous.
No.
And probably some crocodiles.
I like to celebrate Shark Week because there's absolutely no danger.
No, sharks and crocodiles. It will be the ultimate pond. Nobody's got that, right? Especially in the middle of Illinois.
That's
like
true.
I'll figure out a way to heat that bad boy and be like,
Yeah.
so what you got? And you're like, don't go in there.
That's great.
Don't do it.
Don't.
That'll be one of my videos. You'll see the one-armed me be like, I lost an arm today, not clickbait. And be like, what happened? Sharks, crocodiles. I was feeding the sharks. I didn't see the crocodile. Lost a limb.
Yada,
right?
yada, yada.
6 months later, be like, what happened to your leg? You know what happened 6 months ago? It happened again. So, M&C Aquatics. I have eggs. You do. Wait, no, hold on. I was mixing up two comments. I have one stimulus with my Maltese. Should I remove them? Definitely. Get the stimulus out of there just because they will hybridize. And most people don't want hybrid shell dwellers, and lots of people frown upon it. I'm one of those people. I do like to keep my Tanganyikans as pure as possible. I get it out of there. They will hybridize for sure if you can. Julia says, where people are buying killifish eggs, there's not a big choice on eBay and Aquabid. I want some pink killifish. I don't know. That's a great question. If anybody's got some killifish connections, I would have said Aquabid, and I would have said the other thing is the wet spot. The wet spot. They sell killifish eggs sometimes. So Amanda says, do you plan anything special for 150,000 subs? It's funny. I'm not really a special planner sort of person with that kind of stuff.
No, you're bad at
I've never been a big celebrate things. So, like for instance, I didn't even go to my college graduation for my undergrad. I didn't go for my master's degree graduation. I just didn't go. I'm like, I'm just not one of those people that does that sort of thing. And like my advisor, I think I might have hurt his feelings a little bit because I think he was expecting to see me there, and I didn't. It wasn't that I was like, oh, I'm not going to that. I just didn't go. So I generally don't do a lot of celebration, like even like birthdays and stuff. That's not like really my thing.
No is the answer?
I guess no. Yeah, the long answer is probably nothing special. I might do something special for like viewers. I would do that, but not anything special for like a big somehow like prime time special video or something. But yeah, even like trophies. I don't have the only trophy I have left is it's a bodybuilding trophy from back in the 90s. I did a bodybuilding show and I've got that in the garage. It's stuck in the garage in the corner, all full of dust and getting all.
That's where it stays.
Yeah, that's where it stays. But like all of my baseball trophies from all that stuff,
nut.
I don't know. I just got rid of them all. I'm like, all right, what do I need these for? So that's just kind of how I roll.
So if you ever want to celebrate, don't call him because he's a bad celebrator.
I guess I am. I'm sorry. I'm a bad celebrator. Amy Spearfish says she loves your channel. That's cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. I think we're going to call it a night. I promised we would do that 20 minutes ago, and we're still blabbing away here. But I can't help it. It's been a good hangout with you guys. Thank you so much for all of the super chats and stickers and all the support that you've shown, and Riddle and Mary Page and Clint and everybody else who was here doing all the moderating and all that stuff. That is really appreciated. Again, we got some cool stuff coming out on tomorrow and Thursday and Saturday, so I hope to see you there. Hopefully you took advantage of that Lowe's Rock special thing before they start selling out of everything. But we will hopefully see you again next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And have a good night. We'll see you guys later.
Bye-bye.